about the situation, the murdering situation that we had here in Norristown past Wednesday, June 3rd, around 8:40 p.m., as the news has already commented and shared all over the news. We know that a young man, a teenager, lost his life in hands of another teenager, which name is Alex Herrera, who has been already on the news. And here is where I want to start my commentary. Many expressions has been given through these days. The picture of Alex Herrera has been all over the news. In my 26 years in this country, I don't remember a picture of a teenager going around everywhere, in every outlet. For many years, we thought that pictures of minors were not able to be shared. However, within the law, it is legal to share the picture of a minor on these cases. It is ethically correct? That will be the question. And I ask this because after reading many expressions around, many commentaries in the social networks, one thing has been very much absent, except for a couple commentaries here or there, which is empathy. Empathy. Condemnation has been all over the place. Condemnation and violence has been all over the place. But empathy is something that we cannot talk. And I want to talk about that today, about this principle. First, I want to express my empathy to both families. I can't imagine the pain of the family that has lost the life of his son. And I can't imagine the pain of the family of the son that today is in jail. Two young lives lose. One that will not see the light again, and the other that will spend very much possible the rest of his life in jail. I want to express my sadness, especially as a someone who has worked the last 15 years of my life working with kids and teenagers, opening ways and paths for them to dream, for them to think, for them to open new ways of their lives, to dream with their capacities, and to dream perhaps with college, to dream perhaps with a family, to dream in things that they should accomplish as adults. Today, both lives has been very much lost. And those dreams are not there. The last 15 years of my life, I have been seeing and listening and working with young kids and teenagers, all the way to see them to flourish in college. Last week, we celebrate that here in Secate. Lives of high schoolers going to college or to the next step in their lives. But this is not enough. I am aware that many organizations here in town do very good work, and I can name a number of them. Carver Center, Expressive Path, OIC, Aclamo, Secate, among many others. As we work hard to open these opportunities for the young people here in town, but it's not enough. It's not enough. We need more opportunities. We need more resources toward our young people. We need more spaces. We need to pay attention to what has happened to a generation. I call it the post-pandemic generation. And as many of you know, I am an anthropologist, and my work is to study the culture and society. And what I have seen in the post-pandemic generation, it is that the pandemic time was a place where this generation was constrained in their lives and in their space. Also, that the economical crisis grew in that time. After the pandemic opened again, many of these families was forced, especially those families in disadvantage, were forced to work 2 to 3 jobs to overcome the debts and to overcome the crisis that the pandemic left behind. That generation of kids that in those days were 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old, many of them has to grow by themselves at home. And in that sense, many of these kids has been, yes, with loving parents that are working hard for them, but at the same time, with the absence of the direction. And a young kid of 9, 10, 12 years old, 13 years old, which the gadget in the hands becomes the direction. In these days, I had the opportunity to talk to some young people. I spoke to 2 young men who I consider very wise, very smart. Both of them, one of them graduating from high school, the other one already in college in his first year. Both of them graduated from Norristown High School. I asked them, I want to understand from your point of view as young men, what happened? I invited them to come to the podcast to share with me because their opinions were very wise and eye-opening. However, afraid for retaliation or afraid to be in front of the camera, and I don't blame them, they told me why we don't share with you of it what we think, and then you can share with the public. And I said, that's good. I will do that because most important is to protect the identity of our young people, especially in a moment in which it means that the adults, we need to mature and to think that this cannot be resolved with more violence. We're in time where we have to decide if we will respond to this with empathy and with solutions, or we will respond to this with more violence. I am afraid that many times in moments like this, violence creates more violence. And that is why I make a call today to nonviolence. I make a call today to rethink ourselves as a community and to rethink ourselves as the role that we have as adults with the young people. Therefore, the first thing that I asked to this young man, it was why we came to this moment. Their answer was very straightforward. Because we have a generation that unfortunately has been growing alone without the presence of the parents. Now, I don't want to hear to put all the responsibility in the parents, because it's not also that. Yes, it has some responsibility, but there is also responsibility in the social systems, and there is also responsibility in society. To understand that this has been times where the violence is irrestricted. That was the second point that this young man told me. Violence is at hand without limits, without restriction, and without regulation. Having said that, it's very easy for the young people today to have access to content of violence and to content even of weapons and other things, and to have all this violence available at hand very easy. Therefore, if these young people has not been involved in certain programs where their lives can flourish, where their lives can discover the different talents that they have, the streets has become the place where they are growing. And having been the streets the place where they are growing, it's easy to guide their lives through emotions. and with those emotions to end in violence and confrontations. And in the conversation with these two young men, they say, we are afraid that this can drive us to a stigmatization in which there should not be division between Hispanics and African Americans because we suffer very much the same dilemmas and the same crises. It should be a place for dialogue, these young two men told me. This should be a place for coming together to reflect in solutions and to reflect in what we can do as adults to prevent that this should happen again and to create the solutions that will give a better future to our kids. It was in the conversation with these two young men, I asked them, what was in your life and what has been in your life as part of the solution? What has been in your lives that makes you to go to college and to dream with college and to dream to cultivate your talents? And they told me it was my mom and my dad who created the space of trust. Since we were kids, and my parents are immigrants, both of them hardworking people, but they were always in charge to think that one of them had to be with us. And sometimes they took turns, but always one of them was with us. Both of them were working hard, but always one of them was with us. And they created a space of trust, telling us, doesn't matter what hard is what you are living, we want always to know what is happening. What is happening in the school, what is happening in the streets, what is happening in your life. And my parents created that space of trust that we were able to communicate clearly who we are, who we were, what were the dilemmas and the fears that we had at the school, what were the things that we were seeing, and what were our dreams. And it was in that space of trust that our parents allow us to find ourselves and to pay attention that we'll be at home, that will be involved in programs, that will be completing our homework, that will be advancing. They had to work too hard, but also they pay us attention. It was that space of trust that these two young men, one is finishing his first year of college, and the other one is going to college. And both of them recognize that the school, that the streets have violence, that they have walked and live in a town where violence has been present since the day they born. However, to create the space of trust has been the difference. In my final question to them, it was what to do today, what to do as a solution. And in the what to do as a solution, it came up something that is very wise, and it's something that we always here in Zacate, we emphasize. This is a time for dialogue and not division. This is a time for empathy and not necessarily a pointing the finger to only one person, because then in that moment the society will forget, because they will blame everything in one person, in one young man, without taking responsibility. And they are completely correct. I believe the same. Pointing the finger in Alex Herrera, showing his picture everywhere, and blaming everything on him, it takes out the responsibility that we have as a society. It takes out the responsibility that we have as a town. It takes out the responsibility that we have as authorities or teachers or whoever we are. Because this is our responsibility to create a world where every child, where every kid should have the right to dream and the right to grow and the right to have opportunities in their lives. It is our responsibility as an adult, and it is our responsibility as a society. Yes, The responsibility in the parents, which I invite constantly to find solutions and to find communication with their kids and to be paying attention to their kids. But yes, it's a responsibility also of us as a society, because we have failed. We have failed to our young people. We have failed not to create enough opportunities for them. And yes, I recognize that we dedicate our lives, many of us, to create those opportunities. As I mentioned before, there are big and important efforts here in town, and I named them. Aclamo, Carver Center, Creative Paths, Secate, OIC, and many others. We are working hard to make those opportunities, but are not enough. We need to create more opportunities. And it is important to align the different efforts, to align the efforts of the authorities, the efforts of the nonprofits, the efforts of the families, the efforts of the school district. Our kids has the right to dream. Our kids has the right to have life. We should not be talking today about a life that was caught and a life that will spend the most of the time in jail. Therefore, for us, it's better not to escalate the violence. The worst thing that we can do is to escalate the violence. The worst thing that we can do is to create more violence above the violence. That's the worst thing that we can do. We should start to behave like adult people with maturity. This is a call to all the leaders. This is a call to parents and to society. And this is a call to authorities, that this is our time to rethink ourselves as a town. Until here, my commentary. Expect in coming weeks and months to continue growing solutions. From our side, on this space of Dialogues of the Immigrant Village, on this podcast that we produce every week, we expect to continue expanding and putting on the plate available opportunities for the people to know what are the services around, and also to continue doing our daily work, opening opportunities for our kids. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. And until the next time, for now, it's time to think. Next week, Monday, I will come back with a second topic that is very important for us to think. Therefore, wait for me on Monday, because we'll have a transmission of Dialogues of the Immigrant Village. Thank you so much. Until the next time, from the city of the brotherly love, Philadelphia, in the suburb of Norristown, this was your friend Obed Arango, and in the